After years of engagement, my childhood sweetheart took a mistress. Upon learning this, I resolutely called off the marriage. He came begging forgiveness, banished the mistress, and had her child aborted, pleading for my return. Without a backward glance, I married into the royal household as a second wife. Since true love was beyond my reach, I sought only wealth and power. On my wedding day, my childhood sweetheart, gaunt and emaciated, asked me, "A man having multiple wives and concubines is commonplace. You could tolerate the other women in his household. So why did you sentence me to death and abandon me after just one mistake?" Why? While embroidering my wedding gown in the mansion, my wet nurse came to tell me that a woman had bought up all the gold thread in every shop in the capital. I frowned at the empty space on the gown. Everyone knew Shui Tingyuan and I were preparing for our wedding. Who else could be causing trouble at a time like this? My wet nurse tried to comfort me. "Young lady, don't be sad. Men are all the same. Those are just birds he can't show in public. It's not worth getting upset over. It would only lower your standing." I forced a smile. "Nurse, Shui Tingyuan is no ordinary man. He's the one I've loved for years. Anyone else is fine, but not him." Because I only asked for his sincerity, yet he proved so disappointing. I didn't go looking for that woman. Wasn't her haughty display meant to lure me to her? But she wasn't worthy, and I refused to lower myself. That evening, my childhood friend Shui Tingyuan brought me my favorite pastries. I said softly, "My hand is injured, I can't embroider the wedding gown anymore." He laughed. "What's the big deal? I'll do it." That very night, he took the gown to the embroidery workshop. And I called my brother, who'd just returned from patrol duty, and followed him there. Separated by a screen, I saw Shui Tingyuan's cold expression as he addressed the woman. "Ayu, did I not tell you to behave yourself lately?" So her name was Ayu. So this was the kind of woman he favored, delicate, fragile, coquettish, the complete opposite of me. Ah Yuan wept and wailed. But seeing his indifference, she wiped her tears with a pout. "But I'm pregnant," the woman cried. Pregnancy makes emotions uncontrollable. Seeing her so joyfully preparing for your wedding made me so sad. Shui Tingyuan's tone remained mocking, yet his gaze softened involuntarily. "She is my betrothed, my childhood sweetheart, my one and only future wife. Ah Yuan. This is a one-time exception." Ah Yuan threw herself into his arms, sobbing and complaining jealously. "How could you be so kind to her? My heart is breaking." Unable to bear it any longer, my brother kicked over the screen before I could react. Under Shui Tingyuan's stunned gaze, my brother furiously kicked him to the ground. Ah Yuan covered her mouth and shrieked beside them. I slowly sat down. I looked at Ah Yuan coldly. "Your hospitality is lacking. You have guests and don't even know to pour tea." She sobbed uncontrollably, kneeling and begging me to spare Shui Tingyuan. "Miss Ah Yuan, whether you're acting or truly afraid, this is how you should address me. You ought to kneel when speaking to me." Resentment and loathing flashed in her eyes. "Yes. You are the general's legitimate daughter. How could a lowly embroiderer like me stand to speak with you?" "Very well. Then kneel properly." Ignoring her tear-filled eyes, I slowly sipped my tea. Shui Tingyuan lay beaten, his face swollen and bruised. He lay gasping on the ground, his pleading, panicked eyes fixed on me. He tried to crawl toward me but was kicked away by my brother. He called out to me, "Ah Sheng, little sister, forgive me." I lowered my gaze to him, my heart a tangled knot of emotions. There was the sharp, knife-twisting pain, but more than that was rage, a rage so intense it rendered me utterly cold. Not just toward him, but toward myself. Years of affection, what I believed to be deep bonds, he had made me misjudge him. I pulled out the marriage contract and slammed it onto his face. His pupils contracted sharply, his voice cracking. No. I stared at him coldly. Shui Ting Yuan. I am deeply disappointed in you. My brother escorted Yuan back to the manor. After learning the full story, father and mother trembled with rage. Shui Ting Yuan's parents were summoned to the estate. Overcome with shame, they repeatedly begged for forgiveness. By the time Shui Ting Yuan rushed over, the annulment proceedings were already finalized. His eyes bulged with fury. I refuse! His father's eyes blazed crimson as he struck him across the face. You refuse? Why then did you keep a mistress before the wedding? Why did you humiliate your fiancé and the entire Yu family? Shui Ting Yuan. Face the consequences of your actions. You are of age now. This fault lies with you. Before elders, relatives, colleagues, and friends, you must bear responsibility. This is your duty and accountability. Shui Ting Yuan was dragged away, and Yuan was expelled. By dawn the next day, news of Shui Ting Yuan and my broken engagement spread far and wide. Suitors flooded my doorstep. Shui Ting Yuan knelt outside my family's door, stripped bare his upper body, and begged forgiveness with a bundle of thorns on his back. He said he had terminated the child within Yuan and sent her out of the city. Gazing at the face I had loved for so many years, I sighed wearily. Shui Ting Yuan. She is your woman. The child she carries is yours. Had you protected her, taking responsibility for her and the child within her womb, I would have been saddened. Yet I would have recognized your sense of duty. At least you would have remained a man. But your actions now only make me despise you. I despise not only you, but also my own judgment for ever having admired you. I could accept him openly moving on to someone else, at least I'd respect his honesty. But I cannot accept the way he's handled this. I despise him. My marriage cannot be delayed. Otherwise, my name will be submitted for the imperial selection later this year. The emperor is old, and his sons are all grown. Marrying an emperor like this offers no value. Mother pointed at the portrait of Prince Jing'an and told me, though your cousin isn't His Majesty's favorite prince, he was raised by your father himself, with both blood ties and personal bonds. Marrying him as a secondary wife, if you win his heart, you'll have a harmonious marriage for life, with wealth and power at your disposal. If you fail to win his heart, fall back on the last resort, as cousins. Familial affection remains. He'll never treat you poorly. Ashing, you hold the card of Chinajiao. Marrying him is your best choice. I nodded. I understood this was the path Mother had chosen for me. She didn't want me to gamble on a man's true feelings again. She only wanted me to live a life of power, influence, wealth, and leisure, a life lived freely and comfortably. Prince Jing'an, Xiao Linan, is 3 years my senior. His mansion teems with concubines presented by others, alongside several secondary consorts of equally distinguished lineage. Father disagreed with Mother's choice, believing men like Shui Ting Yuan were rare exceptions. Even if Xiao Linan is the strongest contender for the throne, the imperial palace is an arena of fame and fortune. Where do wealth and power compare to a single heart? How could you women possibly understand the loneliness of standing atop the world? With my current rank and influence, finding a man of humble background who needs our family's support to marry Aishing for life would be no trouble at all. How could Aishing throw the baby out with the bathwater? Just because Shui Ting Yuan changed his heart. She thinks all men in this world are like that. Mother said coldly. Perhaps you should first count how many women you've shared your bed with over the years. If she marries into a family of lesser standing, they won't love my daughter, they'll covet the advantages brought by you, her father-in-law. As for Ashing's marriage, she agreed to it herself. How could I, as her mother, ever harm my own daughter? Father was rendered speechless. On my wedding day, gongs and drums resounded through the streets. Even after the Shui family confined Shui Tingyuan, he managed to slip away on his own. He was gaunt and emaciated, so thin I scarcely recognized him. All these years, save for his official duties that took him away, we had seen each other nearly every day. Now, after merely half a year apart, it felt like an eternity had passed between us. The familiarity of the past vanished, replaced by a pervasive sense of strangeness in my heart. His pale face asked me, "A man having multiple wives and concubines is commonplace. You could tolerate the other women in his household. Yet why? After just one time, do you sentence me to death and abandon me? Why?" I sighed inwardly but gave no answer. Mother was right, a man's true heart is worth betting on only once. When you've tasted enough pain and resentment, your heart hardens like iron. Sheng, don't regret this. I silently pulled the veil over my head. Without a backward glance, I walked away from Shui Tingyuan. The wedding and bridal chamber rituals were tedious. The wet nurse had explained the procedures days in advance. Yet as I sat on the wedding bed, waiting for Xiao Linen, my heart still pounded nervously. The man entered from outside, his steps deliberate. The moment the door closed, I seemed to catch the scent of blood again. During the years I spent with my father at the frontier, we had exchanged nods of acquaintance. I had seen him kill men and shoot tigers. My intuition and judgment had always been sharp. From the moment I first laid eyes on him, I knew he would be the next emperor. Xiao Linen lifted my veil, looking down at me from above. "Raise your head." Through heavy makeup, I met his gaze. I did not fear him. My family lineage is equally distinguished. Regardless, he must treat me with dignity, that is the confidence bestowed upon me by my paternal and maternal clans. After removing my jewelry and washing, before I could even don my undergarments, his scorching body pressed against mine. The heat seeped through my limbs and bones. I couldn't help but shiver. His firm jaw rested on my shoulder as his lips brushed my earlobe. "Call me husband." "No." He snorted with amusement, effortlessly scooping me up and tossing me onto the bed. That night, I nearly died in that bed. By the end, I couldn't even count how many times I'd cried out husband. The next morning, he rose refreshed and alert. My eyes were dark and puffy, my legs weak. When the several secondary consorts and the newly arrived beauties came to pay their respects, I was so dizzy I could barely tell them apart. I silently cursed Xiao Linen in my mind when a sharp, indignant voice suddenly pierced my ears. "If the princess consort is unwell, she should rest. The secondary consorts in charge of household affairs are willing to take over indefinitely." I lifted my gaze to the speaker, concubine Shui. She was Shui Tingyuan's elder sister, Shui Shu, and also Xiao Linen's most favored secondary consort. Ever since the death of Xiao Linen's original princess consort, she had managed all household affairs. I curved my lips into a faint smile. A mocking smile. Her face darkened. "What is the princess consort laughing at?" I replied with a bright smile. "Of course I'm delighted. Since consort Shui is willing to continue handling everything, it couldn't be better." She snorted and sat back down smugly. After everyone had left, only she and I remained in the hall. She looked at me with contempt. "You couldn't bear my brother having other women. Yet in the end, you married a man with a harem. Truth is, you abandoned him long ago, didn't you? Back in the barracks, you set your sights on the prince, didn't you? And my brother gave up even the princess for you. Song Sheng, you're utterly unworthy of him." Her eyes burned crimson as she glared at me with venom, as if she wanted to flay me alive. I snorted derisively. "Seeing you so furious, I almost thought it was me who kept a mistress before marriage and got her pregnant. Even the son of a lowly 7th-rank official knows not to engage in sordid affairs before his wife arrives. Yet the son of a noble marquis family doesn't understand this? Truly, He's despicable beyond measure, utterly lacking in refinement. She lunged at me in fury, only to freeze in terror at the icy voice behind her and collapse to her knees. "What are you doing?" Xiao Linen settled beside me with effortless ease. I took the official cap he removed and handed it to the maid, then poured him a cup of hot tea. Our familiarity and harmony didn't feel like newlyweds, but rather long-time lovers. Xue Shu knelt on the floor, shot me a resentful glance, then turned her gaze to Xiao Linen, biting her lip as she smiled. This concubine and the princess consort are old acquaintances. Just now, I merely tripped and nearly knocked the princess consort down. Xiao Linen's expression was icy. His slender fingertips tapped the rim of the teacup. He lifted his eyelids, his gaze cold and indifferent as he looked at me. "Speak." I nodded slowly. Xiao Linen's expression darkened, and he flung the cup from his hand. "This prince abhors deceit. The princess consort, newly arrived, may not understand. But you, A Shu, do you not understand either?" Xue Shu instinctively straightened her kneeling posture, her eyes instantly reddening. This servant was merely speaking up for my younger brother. Xiao Linen sneered. "Your brother's marriage to the Song family was a match made in heaven for your clan. Do you think he sailed through the imperial court so smoothly after passing the exams because he deserved it? Even those who ranked higher than him were sent to provincial posts, while he alone became a court official in the capital. He reaped the benefits of this marriage. Yet before the wedding, he committed such a disgraceful act to humiliate the Song family. He shows no respect for my uncle, and even less for me." Xue Shu wept like rain. "She's only been married for a single day, and already you're showing such favoritism toward her." A flash of malice flickered in Xiao Linen's eyes. I quickly interjected with a forced smile to smooth things over. "The secondary consort is unwell. She should return to rest first." Xue Shu bit her lip, looking pitifully at Xiao Linen. Xiao Linen waved his hand in exasperation. "The princess has spoken. Why haven't you left yet?" Xue Shu seemed crushed, unable to hold back any longer. She sobbed as she was escorted out. Xiao Linen dismissed everyone else in the room. He sighed helplessly to me. "Ashu's been spoiled by me. She's straightforward, used to speaking her mind without restraint. But her heart is pure." With him saying that, what more could I say? "I know. I won't put you in a difficult position." He nodded. "My cousin has always been sensible." After he left, the wet nurse told me happily, "Everyone says the prince has favored consort Xue these past years, though the other consorts clearly surpass her in both family background and temperament. He still lets her manage the household, trampling the others' dignity underfoot. I thought you'd have to endure some humiliation. But on your very first day, the prince actually rebuked her for your sake." I took a detached sip of tea, my eyes never lifting. "Nanny, you've misunderstood." Xiao Linen's anger today over Xue Tingyuan's matter wasn't about defending me. It was because half his bloodline belongs to the Song family. He was raised by my father at the frontier from childhood. His closest friends and loyal subordinates who risked their lives for him are all Song family members. If anything, he was defending the Song family's honor and his own. Not a single word of his rebuke touched Xue Shu. She'd been married to him for over 5 years, long severed from the Xue clan. His anger was directed solely at the Xue family behind her. If I were to assume Xue Shu failed to win his heart and seek out her troubles because of this, that would be courting disaster. The wet nurse's eyes, which had just lit up with a hint of hope, now clouded over again. She spoke anxiously. "Are we to let a mere concubine control the household affairs of the prince's mansion? You must find a way to make the prince take notice of you." I smiled. "It's just managing the household affairs of a prince's mansion. What's there to fight over? The dowry my parents gave me is enough to last 10 lifetimes. If he treats me well, we'll live as respectful guests. If not, I'll live alone with my fortune." I had the wet nurse select a pair of jade ruby from my dowry to appease Shueshu. Before the wet nurse even stepped out of her courtyard gate, Shueshu had already smashed the jade rubies to pieces. Her maid spat out angrily. "Paw! What filthy, stinking things they send to our secondary consort's courtyard. The prince never spared us anything good before, there are countless items far superior to these. That was just looking for trouble. Truly, there was nothing better than mine. Mine came straight from the palace, carefully selected through layers of screening in the mortal world." I felt a pang of regret for a few seconds after smashing it. But I wasn't angry. The wet nurse, however, was furious. If I hadn't warned her beforehand, I'm afraid the moment Xiao Linen entered my room, before he even sat down, she would have started complaining. But she never considered that this is the Jing'an prince's mansion, Xiao Linen's residence. What could possibly escape the notice of the master of this house? It all came down to whether he wished to inquire or punish Shueshu. Clearly, Xiao Linen had no intention of punishing Shueshu. Right up until bedtime. I didn't bring up the matter. Nor did he. The next day at noon, after returning from court, he brought me a pair of jade ruby scepter ornaments. Though not as fine as my own, they were still quite exquisite. I accepted them with delight. "Thank you, cousin," he sighed, looking at me with a rare hint of regret. I knew well the consequences of discord in the inner quarters. Yet both you and I had lived our entire lives under our uncle's strict rules. We were like molds set in stone, stagnant and lifeless in this capital city. I understood better than anyone how ill-suited Aju's temperament was for the times. Yet when I saw her throw tantrums, spoiled, willful, heedless of the occasion, I felt little anger. I envied her, and I liked her just the way she was. "Cousin, can you understand me?" I smiled and nodded. "I understand, cousin. You are destined for great things. I won't quarrel with her over these petty matters of the inner quarters. We are family, cousin. Your prosperity means prosperity for the Song household. And ultimately for me. That Shueshu can bring you joy is already of immense importance. Only when your spirits lift can you find peace of mind. And only with peace of mind can you accomplish great things. I will never place you in a difficult position." Xiao Linen drew a deep breath and squeezed my hand gratefully. When Shueshu burst in crying, this was the scene of marital affection she witnessed. She threw herself recklessly toward us, even trying to fight me. I merely accidentally broke the jade scepter she sent. Yet you cut out my personal maid's tongue. Do you realize she and I are as close as sisters? How could you be so heartless? I kept silent, trying desperately to fade into the background. She should never have mentioned being like sisters. Xiao Linen and I are truly blood-related cousins. Her cursing me was one thing. But her maid, what kind of creature dares insult me? Xiao Linen sparing that maid would be a miracle. This just goes to show how miserable it is to be a cannon fodder subordinate under a brainless boss. Xiao Linen stared at her coldly, a faint trace of disappointment flickering in her eyes. I have indeed spoiled you too much. So much so that you've lost all sense of proper conduct. And even the servants around you have followed your example. Tomorrow, I will have a palace matron come to teach you proper etiquette. Shueshu was struck dumb. She couldn't fathom it. All these years in the prince's mansion, she'd ruled with such arrogance. And her maids had bullied others under her authority. Xiao Linen wasn't unaware. But why? When it came to me, did it suddenly stop working? Endless grievances welled up in her eyes. Finally, her voice trembling, she asked, "Have you fallen for her? You don't love me anymore, do you? I'm not your most beloved anymore, am I?" I nearly spit out my tea. Xiao Linen's face darkened. The homecoming day was meant to be a joyous occasion. But when Xiao Linen saw the gifts Shueshu had prepared for his visit to her family, the hint of happiness vanished instantly from his eyes. Has the Prince of Jing'an's mansion run out of money? Or have you gone mad with poverty? I gave you 3 days, is this what you prepared for me? A barrage of accusations left Shueshu utterly humiliated before the servants. What's wrong with these? When you accompanied me and the other secondary consorts back to our families. These were the gifts we brought. The princess consort comes from a distinguished family, don't we? Does your highness intend to show favoritism? Xiao Linen laughed bitterly. You know full well she's the princess consort, while you are secondary consorts. Absurd. Steward! Go to the storeroom. Wrap up that Southern Sea Guanyin statue and that newly acquired sword of mine. Bring them both here. Shueshu grabbed his hand, glared at me, and whispered urgently. You're mad. The Guanyin statue was meant for the Empress Dowager's birthday. The sword was your tribute to His Majesty. Xiao Linen's face turned ashen as he flung her hand away. You should reflect on your own actions. As if she'd ever reflect on anything. She was a concubine's daughter. Never favored from the start. Back in girls' school, she ranked last in every subject. Her sisters were all married off as principal wives to her father's political allies. Only she was sent to the prince's mansion as a plaything, no different from the songstresses sent from home. Had she not possessed an exceptionally beautiful face, coupled with a temperament that suited Xiao Linen's tastes, she would never have ascended to the position of secondary consort. When Xiao Linen claimed to cherish her, it was no different than keeping a pet that amused him. He never bothered to understand her past, nor did he ever seek to comprehend her world or her thoughts. He moved through the court, having seen too many clever people, always speaking in ways that forced others to guess. Did he never consider whether Shueshu possessed the intelligence to guess correctly? The wet nurse couldn't help but speak up for me. Your Highness, you favor consort Shue too much. I froze, my face hardening as I snapped. The affairs of the prince are none of your concern. Wet nurse, you have overstepped. Leave. My rare display of sharp words and stern expression made the wet nurse immediately kowtow an apology. Xiao Linen looked startled for a moment. After getting into the carriage, he said, the wet nurse is the person closest to you. You shouldn't have scolded her in front of so many people, humiliating her. What she said wasn't wrong. Long-serving servants in prominent households deserve a measure of respect, even from their masters. I replied calmly. She is indeed my closest confidant, but she remains a servant in my household. Affection cannot transcend status. You are my husband, my master. She may speak privately with you, but she has no right to publicly question your authority. Her transgression reflects my failure as her master. I shall forfeit my monthly stipend for the coming months. I deserve this punishment. Must it come to this? I knew Xiao Linen was thinking of Shueshu. He believed I was reminding him that I was making an example of her. In truth, I was. Cousin, on the battlefield you are a celebrated general. You manage your subordinates with strictness, rewarding merit and punishing fault. Thus, your example is followed, creating an orderly situation. But why, when you return to your own residence, do you become so lax and indulgent? You know full well Shueshu lacks the ability to manage the household. Yet you indulge her. Is it simply because you favor her? You're also aware the royal household's accounts are in disarray. Yet you neglect them. You dismiss these matters as trivial. For wealth means little to you. What harm could Shueshu's extravagance truly cause? After all, the Song family stands behind you. You always have a fallback. So you remain unhurried, letting her indulge in extravagance and overstep boundaries. My gaze was cold, my tone calm, yet I tore away the veil of pretense. Xiao Linen drew a deep breath, tightening his grip on my hand as he asked, why are you being so sharp today? The matter of the return visit gifts was Ah Shu's fault. I'll speak to her about it. Jealousy isn't your nature. I raised an eyebrow. Cousin, there's no need to downplay this. I have no reason to compete with her. Her mistake lies in the return gift. But what angers me is that she would bring shame upon us both, turning the Song family into gossip fodder. Cousin, are you truly unaware? The greatest fault in this matter rests with you, not Shueshu. Without your indulgence and permissiveness, how could she dare to act this way? I slowly withdrew my hand. Mother had me marry you because you are my father's only nephew, and he cherished you more than his own children, whether the Song family wants it or not. They must propel you to the throne, and since you've enjoyed the Song family's wealth and support, you ought to strive for a favorable outcome for them and the ministers who back you. Truthfully, I'm quite curious, why would you assume my anger stems from jealousy over Shueshu? Could it be that in your eyes, a woman's anger always originates from a man? Xiao Linen stood stunned, seemingly silenced by my words. No one has ever dared speak to me this way, not even your father. I smiled faintly. Cousin, I care not for your private affairs or whom you favor. But should it tarnish the mansion's reputation, jeopardize your future, or harm the Song family, that is unacceptable. This is my bottom line. The homecoming feast proceeded smoothly, devoid of the reproach Xiao Linen anticipated. My parents raised me from childhood. They know my capabilities and character well. They know I won't let myself be wronged. On the way back, Father presented me with 2 gifts, which I then gave to Xiao Linen. This one was for the Empress Dowager on her birthday. This one was for His Majesty. Xiao Linen's face burned fiercely. Deflated, he apologized to me. Ashing, I'm sorry. After returning, he promptly handed over the stewardship of the household. Seeing the red mark on his neck, I couldn't help but chuckle. He awkwardly scratched his nose. I laid out my questions up front. By handing me these steward's credentials, does that mean I now oversee every matter in the estate? Does that include all personnel, even your concubines? Do I hold the authority to impose punishments? Xiao Linen smiled. Trust those you employ, and do not employ those you doubt. Since I've entrusted this to you, you naturally hold full responsibility. Very well. I looked at him. Concubine Shui assaulted your highness, an act of insubordination. A month of confinement. Is that too harsh? The wound on Xiao Linen's neck was glaring. He knew deep down that his excessive indulgence of Shueshu had fueled her growing arrogance. If left unchecked, it would inevitably lead to disaster. Not harsh at all. The princess consort may decide. Overnight, the winds within the prince's residence shifted completely. Shueshu was taken by my men and confined to the most dilapidated courtyard in the entire estate. As she was led away, she continued to hurl foul insults at me. I specifically ordered the wet nurse to escort her, and she received several slaps from the nurse along the way. I had no desire to harm her, but she must learn her place and the rules. All the insolent maids and servants in Shueshu's courtyard were sent to the estate to perform hard labor. Xiao Linen remarked. Selling them off would suffice. Why go to such trouble? I replied. During her years managing the inner quarters, Shueshu accumulated many unsavory affairs. Selling them off risks leaks that could harm you. Stationing them at the estate for a few years of hard labor, with their contracts still registered to the prince's household, will only make them accept their fate. Xiao Linen nodded. You've handled this well. After dealing with the servants in Shueshu's quarters, the household settled down considerably. The constant bickering and scolding that had been commonplace vanished. Xiao Linen's assets consisted of what his aunt had left him, plus the estates and shops bestowed by His Majesty after each victorious campaign. The tangled mess of accounts was enough to give anyone a headache. For the sake of my health, I transferred several shop managers from my own establishments. Within 7 days, all the accounts were sorted out. Xiao Linen glared at the deficit ledger, fuming. So much money vanished into thin air. What did she do with it? Ah Xing. Did you tamper with the accounts? I've already confined her as you requested, there's no need to be so ruthless. I laughed. A bitter laugh. Your Highness. Just have your people investigate. He claimed it wasn't necessary, yet still ordered his men to look into it. The wet nurse sighed bitterly. Young lady, did you marry the wrong man? I shook my head. No. As you taught me. Men are all like this. He hasn't done anything wrong. It's only natural for people to favor those they love. Had I married someone else, the outcome might not have been as good as it is now. The wet nurse wiped away her tears. Young lady, why can't you find someone who truly cares for you? I smiled faintly. I have. A man's sincerity is always fleeting, like Xue Tingyuan's toward me back then, or Shaolinen's toward Xueshu now. Having had it is enough. There's no need to demand it last forever. When Shaolinen returned a few days later, he said nothing else but this. Xueshu is confined to her quarters for 3 months. From now on, you manage all affairs in the manor, great and small. I will not interfere. An outcome I'd anticipated. Nothing special. When Xueshu was finally released, 4 months had passed. The manor had transformed. The shops outside were turning a profit, each month surpassing the last. Shaolinen invited a matron from the palace specifically to teach her etiquette and propriety. She was made to learn everything she neglected in her lessons all those years ago. Though 4 months seemed brief, she appeared less frivolous than before. On the 4th night after her release, Shaolinen retired to her quarters. The wet nurse remarked, "That vixen! She's run the estate into such disarray. Yet His Highness treats her with such leniency, now he's gone to her room again." I stroked my belly and yawned. Shaolinen simply hadn't learned his lesson yet. If Xueshu brought him consequences he couldn't bear, he'd abandon her no matter how beautiful she was. Nanny, you understand me best. If Shaolinen ascends the throne, who knows how many women like Xueshu will enter the palace. You'd better get used to it. But young lady, can you truly get used to it? I smiled faintly. Naturally. He holds no place in my heart. Even if 10,000 women appear, as long as they don't threaten my position or that of my child, they are none of my concern. The next day after court, Shaolinen came to see me. Did you know? Xueshu is 4 months pregnant. I truly had no idea. How could you be a princess consort and not know she was carrying your child? Yet you allowed the matron to teach her etiquette so harshly. I frowned in disgust. Suddenly, I felt like killing Shaolinen. I touched my belly and held back. This is indeed my fault. Cousin, please don't be angry. I'll have the imperial physician examine her immediately. Shaolinen swept his sleeves and stormed out. I had it investigated, Xueshu's child is indeed Shaolinen's. 4 days on end, Xueshu behaved with an unnatural docility and virtue, even offering to let Shaolinen sleep with other concubines. The wet nurse couldn't sit still. What on earth does she want? I didn't even lift my head. Does pregnancy suddenly make fools wise? With her temper, how long could she possibly endure? Upon learning of Xueshu's pregnancy, the Xue family requested she return home for a short stay. When she came back, she brought a yuan with her. I sipped my tea, watching her. What purpose does bringing your brother's concubine serve? Xueshu replied with a smile. Your Highness, you may not know. My brother's concubine is exceptionally skilled. Not only is she Chang'an's finest embroiderer, but she also cooks marvelously. I've grown accustomed to her cooking these past days, nothing else satisfies my appetite now. The prince knows about this too. I rolled my eyes. Very well. From now on, let her prepare meals for the womenfolk of this household. Since her cooking is so splendid, everyone should have the pleasure of tasting it. The smile vanished instantly from Yuan's face. I am not a cook. I shot her a glance and retorted bluntly. Indeed you are not. Cooks come from respectable families. What business do you have here? Coming from a brothel? If you two keep stirring up trouble, I'll have my brother take your brothel contract and report Shueting Yuan. Yun fumed. So you beat me to the brothel, madam? You heartless creature. Xue Lang treated you with genuine sincerity. How could you repay him like this? Xue Shu grabbed her arm. Shut up. Go back. Yun was sent back to the Xue residence. Xue Shu returned to her room, unwilling to accept defeat. That very night, she saw blood. Xiao Linen asked me wearily. Ashing, can't you bear to tolerate her? Even if not for her sake. Couldn't you endure it for my child? Gazing at Xue Shu's triumphant eyes, I knelt and pleaded for forgiveness. It was my negligence. Please punish me, Your Highness. After speaking, I fainted. When the imperial physician arrived, he confirmed I was 3 months pregnant. When this news reached Xue Shu, she was so enraged she smashed several antiques. The wet nurse voiced her concern. Young mistress, weren't we supposed to wait until 5 months? It's only 3 months now. What if something goes wrong? I laughed coldly. Xiao Linen has no heir. Now that Xue Shu is pregnant, she's naturally priceless to him. Even if I'm not at fault, he'll blame me. I refuse to be caught in the crossfire of their love-hate drama. Now that I'm pregnant, his presence or absence matters little. Nanny, let's prepare to return home. Morning sickness began daily, robbing me of appetite. Compared to Xue Shu's child, the one growing within me is the true legitimate heir. Xiao Linen grew frantic each day, even drawing the emperor's attention to the matter. Mother arrived just in time, silencing Xiao Linen with a few well-chosen words. Your mother passed away early, and there was no one in the household skilled in caring for pregnant women. Now, with 2 pregnancies at once, how could you possibly manage both? Ashing is my own flesh and blood, would I ever harm her? The Song residence is her home, we will naturally cherish and care for her. Thus, I returned to the estate without incident. Mother escorted me to a secluded mountain villa outside the capital for proper recuperation. Yet on the very next day of my arrival, I encountered Shueting Yuan. Seeing him, I recalled this was the area he patrolled daily for official duties. He looked at me and said coldly, being expelled from the prince's residence must be unpleasant. Had you married me back then? No matter what, I would never have treated you this way. I wouldn't have let a Yuan surpass you either. I nodded. I believe you. Hearing you say that. Of course I believe you. He drew a deep breath. Then why did you break off the engagement and marry another? I pondered for a second, then smiled with utter sincerity. Perhaps because I didn't particularly like my husband getting up before dawn every day to patrol. His rank was higher than mine. I figured I'd just endure it. Besides, the Empress Dowager and the Emperor showered me with gifts when they learned I was pregnant. And my child would be at least a princess or prince from birth. Ah, thinking about it that way. Well, I suppose I am quite fortunate. He flew into a rage. You'll regret this. Actually, you're the one who'll regret it. That's why you keep saying that. I get it. But put me down already. I'm about to become a mother, this is getting annoying. The wet nurse trotted over, beaming. Young mistress, hurry back. The palace has sent more gifts. I smiled and bid farewell to Shueting Yuan, whose face was ashen. Life went on comfortably like this. I ate, slept, ate, and was then urged by the wet nurse to take walks. Xiao Linen's visits grew more frequent. Eventually, he refused to return to the prince's mansion at all, moving his belongings here permanently. After I left, Xiao Linen entrusted all household management to another concubine, Lin, whose family background was equally distinguished. Concubine Lin swiftly mastered the protocols I had established, ensuring the estate ran smoothly inside and out. Xue Shu grew restless, stirring trouble every other day. She resorted to slander and humiliation, even calling her a hen that never lays eggs. But Lady Lin's family wasn't one to be pushed around. As the two families clashed over divorce, Grand Tutor Lin launched a fierce campaign in court, accusing Xiao Linen of favoring Xue Shu. Several other concubines, long tormented by Xue Shu, also refused to stand by. They urged their fathers and brothers to denounce Xiao Linen in court. For years, Xiao Linen had sailed smoothly with my father's backing. This was the first time he faced such a backlash. It was also the only time my father didn't speak up for him, instead claiming illness to avoid court. When Xiao Linen sought an audience with my father, he refused to see him. Left with no choice, he finally came to me. He wanted me to act as an intermediary, persuading my father to aid him. I returned to the capital with him, only to discover my father refused to see even me. The steward by my father's side stepped forward and declared before Xiao Linen, "Young miss, why have you returned? You must leave at once. Lord Xiao has stated that once you bear his child, you shall be divorced from the prince." Xiao Linen's face drained of color. "No! Let me see my uncle." I pulled Xiao Linen back. "You go back. Leave father to me. I'll persuade him for you." Xiao Linen looked utterly distraught. He was finally showing fear. He hadn't realized matters within the inner quarters could have such profound repercussions. After he left, I knelt outside the door. Only after an hour did my father allow me in. The moment I entered, he hurriedly summoned a physician to examine me. It was just acting. A short kneel would have sufficed. Why kneel so long? Unless I knelt longer. How could I convince him? Later, using the same method, I persuaded the fathers of several secondary consorts, who had shut themselves away and refused to see Xiao Linen, to open their doors. When Xiao Linen learned of this, he rushed over. His eyes reddened, and knelt beside me to confess his wrongdoing. As a prince, his single act of kneeling immediately opened the gates. My father returned to court, and the lords, having shed their earlier anger, spoke favorably of him. It's only natural for a man to be a bit of a ladies' man. The third prince has now reformed his ways, a blessing for us old ministers. The emperor himself never found his son's flirtatious ways objectionable. He was a womanizer himself. With the matter resolved, the censors ceased their complaints, and he naturally paid it no mind. That night, Xiao Linen personally applied medicine to my wounds. As he gazed at the bleeding gashes on my knees, his eyes flushed crimson. "Ah, Xing. Thank you. Cousin. You are first my cousin, then my husband. Only when you are well can I be well. Since I married you, I have committed myself to you. Whatever I do for you is only right." He gripped my shoulders, pulling me into his embrace, tears spilling uncontrollably. "Cousin, I will treat you well from now on. I will never again favor a concubine over my wife." So he knew all along that he had been favoring a concubine over his wife. After 9 months of pregnancy, the moment of childbirth arrived. Following the birth of her son, Xue Shu was sent to the estate and confined there. The child was taken to be raised by Consort Lin. To ensure Consort Lin would raise the child without reservation, Xiao Linen issued an order. Henceforth, whoever speaks of this child shall say he is Consort Lin's own, and she is his birth mother. Concubine Lin expressed gratitude, yet remained uneasy. Over the years, Xiao Linen had always acted this way. After scolding Xue Shu and cold-shouldering her for days, he would eventually recall her charms and resume his favor. Seizing the moment when the emperor was campaigning against rebels in the east and Xiao Linen was busy overseeing the realm, she had someone lace Xue Shu's meals with poison, and I pretended not to know. This was the leverage she offered me, her token of surrender. After months of fierce battle, His Majesty died on the return journey. Xiao Linan ascended the throne without incident. I became empress, and several concubines were elevated to consorts. My son was proclaimed crown prince, just as consort Lin had predicted. 6 months into his reign, Xiao Linan once again remembered Xueshu. In the dead of night, he had Xueshu secretly brought back to the palace. He told me, "Ah Xing, I cannot forget her." I smiled. In the previous dynasty, an emperor took a fancy to his son's wife. He publicly declared her dead, sent her to a Taoist temple for rest and recuperation, and years later, brought her back to the palace to be crowned a consort. If your Majesty truly cannot forget her, then so be it. He held me tightly. Ah Xing, you truly are my understanding flower. I gave no clear answer. But when he actually saw Xueshu, his face paled, his voice trembling. Who are you? Where is Aishu? Xueshu, nearly 3 times his size, gasped. Your Majesty, I am Aishu. How did you become so large? Cold sweat beaded on Xiao Linen's forehead as he hurriedly ordered her sent away. When Consort Lin came to my palace to recount this, she laughed until tears streamed down her face. I truly believed he was genuinely in love. I'd even resolved that if he still adored the 300 Jin Xueshu as before, I would accept it. Even if he were to give Xueshu the eldest prince I'd raised to adulthood, I'd accept it. But I never imagined he'd fail the test so easily. Terrified by Xueshu's shadow, Xiao Linan avoided the harem for days. When not indulging in beauty, he was a remarkably dedicated emperor. He personally instructed the crown prince. Father began relinquishing power at this time. He told me, the emperor has ascended the throne. The Song family has become imperial in-laws. No longer his blood kin. You must measure your words and actions carefully. I nodded. Father sighed. The emperor favors beauties. Children in the harem will surely multiply in the future. I told you then, the higher you climb, the colder it gets. Your mother wouldn't listen to me and insisted you marry him. I remained silent, letting father continue his admonition. What I didn't tell father was that Xiao Linan would never have children. That kind of humiliation was enough just once. I wouldn't let him do it to me again. I only needed to endure another 10 years. And then I'd be completely free. I made a 10-year calendar, counting down each day until my moment arrived. In the 3rd year of Xiao Linan's reign, the triennial imperial selection took place. He anticipated this selection with great eagerness. The palace held only the few concubines and beauties who had followed him from the prince's mansion. He had grown weary of them all. I, too, awaited it with equal anticipation. When the gong sounded and rows of women stepped forward steadily, lifting their plain yet dignified faces, Xiao Linan's expression immediately fell. He only liked women as alluring as Xueshu. I, however, did not meet his expectations. By the end of the selection, Xiao Linan resignedly kept only a few young ladies from distinguished families, dismissing all the others. I comforted him. Your Majesty, the next selection will be better. He perked up. I must attend to the memorials now. Little did he know, 3 years would pass. Then another 3. As long as I lived, he would never be distracted by beauty. Never let it influence state affairs. He must diligently manage my son's realm until my heir ascends the throne. The end.